Bob's high-tech color board of truth and justice. As you can tell, it's the Christmas special edition. So welcome. Today what we're going to be talking about is ICBC and the way in which they have set it up so that it would appear that we no longer have the rights that our parents and our grandparents did. Now, most people will believe that you need a driver's license in order to get out on the highway and engage in your common law right to travel. However, that's not the case. The fact is, there's no one in ICBC who's willing to claim that the common law right to travel no longer exists, and I'll tell you why. Anytime you get stopped on the highway, the police are going to be pointing to what they like to refer to as the Motor Vehicle Act. Now, depending on where you are, they might call it the Highway Traffic Act, Highway Safety Act, something along those lines, but they will point to a body of words, and they will claim that because of this body of words, you have certain duties, and these duties involve submitting an application for registration for your automobile, turning it into a motor vehicle, and that you must produce identification, license, and obey all the rules of the road and the Motor Vehicle Act. You must stop for them, and essentially you have to contract with this private entity called ICBC, which is the Insurance Corporation of British Columbia. Now, insurance has been identified, it's legally defined as a scheme. And it is a form of gambling. And we all know the house always makes their money when it comes to gambling, don't we? So the question is, does the MVA, does the Motor Vehicle Act create an obligation upon us to do what these people want us to do? Or is it merely an invitation, which if accepted? Now the problem is, I know what the truth is. I've looked at it, and I'll explain to you why the Motor Vehicle Act simply doesn't affect previously existing rights. I'll tell you why. It's very simple. The previously existing rights aren't mentioned at all. There's a concept at law that says an act which has the intent or the purpose of affecting a previously existing right must do so clearly, specifically, and unequivocally. You can't not mention a right and then claim that an act removed that right because it wasn't mentioned. Otherwise, the Motor Vehicle Act would remove a whole slew of rights. For a right to be affected by a body of words such as the MVA, it must be mentioned. The Motor Vehicle Act must mention the previously existing common law right to travel in privately owned automobiles in order to claim that the Motor Vehicle Act, in order for them to claim that the Motor Vehicle Act affects it. If it's not mentioned clearly, specifically, and unequivocally, then it is not affected clearly, specifically, and unequivocally. Now the problem is, you talk to the people in ICBC, they know this. They know that they're merely a corporation engaging in a gambling scheme to extract money, and they will claim public safety, and they point that all they're doing is what the provincial government has told them to do. So it's the provincial government now that has the liability, because they're the ones directing ICBC, who then, what do? They, of course, go out and they hire cops with guns. And tasers. Big sticks. Steel-toe boots. these cops with guns, tasers, big sticks, and steel-toe boots, they operate upon the assumption that the words created by the provincial government, this MVA, which empowers ICBC and which empowers ICBC to empower the cops, they operate like that body of words gives them a complete monopoly on the roads, and that they now have the right to stop us from exercising in previously existing rights. And if it wasn't for this MVA, they would have no power, no right whatsoever to bring forth anything against someone. So remove that. Are you doing anything unlawful? Clearly not. Now comes the time where does it say in the MVA that the previously existing right? And you might get off, but the cop still gets to arrest you and harass you. And if you take it into court, you know what the judge will say? These cops, they're operating with color of right. They're wrong, they're ignorant of the law, they're grossly negligent, but because ICBC never told them the limits of their authority, they have the right to operate in the manner that they do. And if you try taking it to ICBC, then you get a whole bunch of lawyers and you get a big runaround and try getting a straight answer from them. So the question is the head of ICBC willing to claim under oath and full commercial liability that the common law right to travel no longer exists? And if he is not willing to do that, does he not have a duty to inform these cops with guns, tasers, big sticks, and steel-toe boots as to the limits of their authority? I think he does. Now, let's look at the next bit here. Okay? We've seen what insurance is. It's a scheme. It's gambling. It's something that the house makes a lot of money at. And here's a little point in law. You cannot be obliged to engage in a gambling scheme. No one can force you to do that. It's a basic function of law. Look, it's like magic. And the people in the provincial government, they know this. Now, the C, I'm using the color one now. The C means they're a corporation. It's Insurance Corporation of British Columbia. Now here's the thing about corporations. They are obliged to act, they're limited in what they can do because acting as a corporation provides them with a certain level of protection and benefit. However, that benefit produces certain liabilities which limits them. If they want the benefits that acting as a corporation affords them, they must bear the burdens. And one of those burdens is that they are obliged to use contract. They can't claim that you have any obligation to them in the absence of a contract. Now, what about the people who never do what the MVA, the Motor Vehicle Act here, wants them to do? And that, of course, is submit an application and register their automobile so that it can be deemed a motor vehicle under that act. The provincial government has taken great steps, or the people in the provincial government, because all they are people using words. And these people and their words, they've created the Motor Vehicle Act, which apparently empowers the Insurance Corporation of British Columbia to monitor or license the motor vehicles or the people who use our roads for their commercial benefit. And that's all fine and good. But now the problem is that ICBC, the people, have hired these people. And these cops don't know what the Motor Vehicle Act actually says and the limits upon it. They operate upon the assumption that that body of words empowers ICBC to empower them to stop us from exercising our rights unless we go and engage in the insurance scheme that is the Motor Vehicle Act and the insurance that they want to provide. Now, somewhere in this great big mess, somewhere between the provincial government, the Motor Vehicle Act, the Insurance Corporation of British Columbia and the cops with their guns and tasers and big sticks and steel-toe boots, somewhere in there is liability, because in the end, these cops are in fact engaging in mischief and interfering in the lawful exercise of rights merely because we don't have the documents that evidences the contract with the Corporation of British Columbia, which would empower them to act as agents and enforce the Motor Vehicle Act against us. So who's liable? Is it the cops because they should know better? Is it ICBC because they should know better? Is it the provincial government for creating a body of words which is so clearly designed to be deceptive? Where's the liability? Personally, since liability, it's all about collecting money, and it's these people who have the money, I think it's up to the head of ICBC, the president and CEO, John Schubert. I think most of the liability rests upon him because he certainly has a duty to understand the limits of the mandate given to ICBC by the Motor Vehicle Act, and he certainly has the duty to inform his agents, the peace officers who are now hired to act as policy enforcement officers, about the limits of their authority. Now, certainly they have a duty, the cops have a duty to understand the limits of this authority, and certainly the provincial government and the people in their words, they have a duty to craft less ambiguous and confusing words. But when you look at the whole thing, what I see is that ICBC is the one with the hot potato, the big duty. They have the big duty to understand the Motor Vehicle Act greater than the cops. They have a duty to limit the cops as they empower them. And when all is said and done, if these cops come and they use their guns, tasers, big sticks, and steel-toe boots in order to enforce a corporate policy upon those who are not in contract, then it's ICBC. It's the people in the top of ICBC who are going to face and taste the liability lash. That's what I see. No contract, no corporate association, no cops can come and enforce a corporate policy upon you, regardless of whether or not they are competent to interpret the Motor Vehicle Act, which they clearly are not. I challenge anyone to show me where in the Motor Vehicle Act the previously existing rights, the things that we could engage in if this act was not there, such as get on the road, privately owned automobile, no permit, no license, no insurance, and travel from point A to point B for non-commercial reasons. That right is still in existence. But these people with their gross negligence and incompetence, these people with their, well, I think it's probably greed. They just want to monopolize the entire road. Any idea how much money these people make off of it? You think the CEO isn't well paid? He's making hundreds of grand a year. And what about these people with their words? The provincial government, certainly they knew that their words in this Motor Vehicle Act were ambiguous and confusing enough that it would result in a situation where guns, tasers, big sticks, and steel-toe boots would be used against those merely exercising their common law rights. So unless I challenge anyone to show me where in the Motor Vehicle Act the previously existing right just mentioned was clearly, specifically, and unequivocally removed. Show me where it's even mentioned if you want to claim that it was affected. But if you can't even show me that right mentioned in that act, you have no right pointing to that act to justify using guns, tasers, big sticks, and steel-toe boots to stop me from exercising that right. So, John, we're going to have a little chat. We're either going to do it in court, small claims, I'm going to bring a claim of liability to you, or we're going to engage in a nice little discussion. On camera. Likely share it with YouTube. Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Your ICBC's what?
Media relations.
Media relations.
Yes.
Sweet, I'm at that stage. That must be so cool.
So, my colleague passed your inquiry. You said you wanted some information about travel rights?
Yes. Well, yeah, essentially, whether or not the Motor Vehicle Act mentions previously existing rights, and whether or not we have an obligation to engage in a contract with ICBC in order to exercise those previously existing rights, and what level, of course, of liability ICBC has if police officers who are acting as policy enforcement officers for that corporation enforce the policy in the absence of a contract using guns, tasers, big sticks, or their steel-toe boots upon people who are merely exercising previously existing rights. So that's essentially the focus of my work.
Okay. Okay. I'm just trying to get my head around this one.
I can help you. Check out thinkfree.ca or the World Freeman Society.
Okay. Okay, well, I will look into this, and what's your deadline?
Well, if I don't make the issue for Wednesday, then I have to do the next one. So, but I would like to get it happening as soon as possible because we also incorporate video productions that go out online. If are you on the internet there? I imagine you are.
Yep.
You want to watch a quick little production of mine? It'll only take a few minutes, and you'll get a sense of what I do.
Maybe if you just give me the address, I'll go to it.
Okay. It's my YouTube account is Mr. Mighty, MrMitee.
Yep.
And the video short is Dealing with Police.
Okay.
And you might enjoy it over lunch. I used to do stand-up comedy, so I was trying to be kind of funny. Right?
Okay. Do you have an email address?
Yes. Freeman Menard.
Okay. Can you spell that for me?
Freeeman.
Yep.
Men.
Yep.
Ard.
Perfect. At
Gmail.
Okay. Perfect. I'll get back to you as soon as possible.
And what was your name again?
Lindsay Olson.
Lindsay Olson?
Yep.
Thank you, Lindsay. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
One of the Olsen twins just phoned me. Maybe not. Well, I received a reply from Lindsay Olsen. Fortunately, it wasn't by phone call, it was by email. And what did she do? Surprise, surprise. She told me that John Schubert, the head of ICBC, is not qualified to share his opinion or his beliefs or his knowledge of his mandate, and that I should talk to the provincial government. So what you're going to see, I'll talk to the provincial government, and you know what they'll say? They'll say you have to talk to ICBC. I talk to the cops, they'll say take it up with the government. So what you end up having essentially are three people, three parties, playing keep away with our rights. Kind of like kids in grade school used to do to me. Well, I was in high school, they were in grade school, but they'd take my hat and pass it around and wouldn't let me have it. It was very embarrassing. But that's essentially what she's trying to do. So we're going to give her a shout, and we're going to see what she has to say about that. And I'm going to question her as to why she believes that the provincial government is the one qualified to tell me what John Schubert's opinions are. Because if that's where he's getting his opinion, I want his opinion. I want to know whether or not he is accepted his duty to inform his agents as to the limits of their authority, or whether or not he is purposely allowing this deception and this gross negligence to continue, because although he didn't create it, he's certainly benefiting from it now. Now I want to interview this guy on camera and talk to him, but he's just, he's shining me, and he's doing it through sweet Lindsay Olsen. So, you know, it's not like I live very far from the Lonsdale Quay or the head ICBC office. It's not like I can't engage in ambush journalism. So I'm going to call her and see whether or not that would be preferable. Hello?
Mr. Menard, please.
Speaking.
Hi, Mr. Menard. It's Christine Barrett. I'm calling for customer relations at ICBC.
Hi, Christine. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. What a beautiful day it is today, isn't it?
Gorgeous day. I just was calling because you had called yesterday in regards to asking if Mr. Schubert would like to do an interview.
Yes, I'm very interested in getting his perspective concerning what some people feel is a fairly contentious issue, and doing it in a manner that, you know, I don't want to be like an ambush journalist or anything like that. I don't want to present, you know, anyone in a bad light. I think, honestly, most people do the best they can with the information they have available to them and their ability to process it. I don't know the man. Chances are he's as decent a human being as anyone. But there are certain concerns that have to be addressed. And telling me that I should go talk to the provincial government, when I go talk to them and they say that they're not qualified to speak to what the president of ICBC believes, you know, so it's...
Okay, well, Mr. Schubert's not interested in doing an interview with you.
He's not?
So, no.
Is he interested at all in answering to the public's concerns that he's operating outside of his mandate?
No, he's not interested in having an interview. That's all I can say.
My next course of action then, unfortunately, would be to file documents in court in order to find the truth to these matters, and I don't know that that would really be in his best interest.
Well, you do whatever you need to do, but he's not interested in doing an interview with you.
Would he be interested in doing an interview with someone else concerning these issues if he doesn't like me personally?
No, it's nothing personal. He just does not want to do an interview at this time.
Okay, well, then I guess we'll see what we'll have to see.
Okay.
But thank you very much.
Okay.
See you on YouTube.
Okay.
Bye. He doesn't want to do an interview at this time. Of course, criminals who are caught acting in criminal fashions generally do not want to be interviewed at this time. Now, I'm not saying this man is a criminal. He might be a very decent man, a very loving man. But I did notice something disturbing when I looked at his picture. ICBC was being operated by Peter Griffith. So I called the Solicitor General, Cash Heed.
I may help you with?
Well, I'm wondering if ICBC falls under her mandate, I guess. If not, then
No, it actually doesn't. It falls under the Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General, which is Minister Cash Heed.
Cool. And Cash
Want me to
Heed...
transfer you over to them?
Sure. Do you have his number first?
Yeah. It is 250.
Yeah.
356.
356.
7717.
7717. And he used to be a police officer, right?
Yes, he did. I think he was with West Vancouver Police.
Kind of a cool name, eh? Cash Heed. If you switch those two letters around.
That would be... yeah. Would you like me to transfer you over to his office?
Yes, thank you very much.
One moment.
Well, as an ex-police officer, he would have very little excuse for not knowing if the laws...
Deputy's office, Kathy speaking.
Hello, I'm looking for Cash Heed.
He's in a meeting. Can I have him return your call?
Sure. My name's Rob.
And where are you calling from, Rob?
Vancouver. Lovely, beautiful Vancouver. How's the weather over there?
Sorry?
How's the weather over there?
Good.
Sweet.
Does he know what the call's about?
I don't know. It depends on the level of his psychic abilities.
Okay.
I'm just playing no, likely he doesn't, but it's concerning ICBC and their mandate.
Okay. Great. And are you a member of the public?
Well, I don't know exactly what that means, but I'm writing an article for a newspaper, so...
Are you a government employee?
No, certainly not. Are you?
You're writing an article for which newspaper?
The Agora.
Sorry?
The National, the Agora National.
The Agora National.
Yeah.
Is that AGORA?
Correct.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Any idea when he might call me back?
I'm not sure.
Would it be possible to ask him to call me back tomorrow? Because I'm going to be stepping away from the phone this afternoon, but I will be available tomorrow.
Okay, I will.
Thank you very much. You have a fantastic day.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
So I had a nice chat
with a man from the Solicitor General's office, an assistant for Cash Heed. And although the recording wasn't very good because the cell phone, I was on my cell phone when I received the call, and the recorder, it also picks up a lot of interference. So I don't have much of a recording of that, but he did direct me to write down my concerns. He probably wanted me to write them down on a piece of paper and mail it in to him directly instead of using what I'm going to use, which is the high-tech color board of truth and justice. So I'm going to write my concerns down on that, include it in my video, and send them a link to my YouTube. So everyone, Cash Heed, the Solicitor General of the province of British Columbia, and other people who are concerned and affected by this issue, can all be on the same page or the same board. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll explain to you what my concerns are. So, hi Cash Heed, you should be watching this. Now, in order to understand what's really on my mind and what my concern is, we really have to look a little bit at the history. There was a time prior to the creation of the Motor Vehicle Act where people could in fact get out on the highway and travel from point A to point B. And provided they were not engaging in commerce on the highway, they had the right to do that. We shall call that the right to travel. Now, however, if you try exercising this right, you get out on the highway in a privately owned, unregistered automobile, and if you don't have a license plate on it issued with the stamp and everything, what do you have happening? You have the men in blue who will come and they will, in fact, stop you from exercising this right. And they will do so by pointing to, let's go this way, they will point to the Motor Vehicle Act here in BC. In other jurisdictions, you might call it the Highway Safety Act, the Highway Traffic Act, something along that lines, but they all point to this body of words. And they claim that this body of words justifies them stopping you from doing what you're doing and to place demands upon you, demanding that you produce identification, driver's license, registration, and insurance. Now, the effect is that the right to travel has been removed by the Motor Vehicle Act. That's pretty much undeniable. But has it in fact been removed? What if it hasn't been? And what if the people who made this act, who authored this act, were relying on their ambiguity and deception and the ignorance of the police to create a situation where the right to travel has been removed and denied us? Now, they're kind of tricky with the MVA and what they do. They say that the Motor Vehicle Act is applicable to, of course, motor vehicles. But is there a difference between a motor vehicle and an automobile? Are they both one and the same or not? Now, the other issue here, this is what it fundamentally boils down to. And when you try to get these people that are involved in this, the police, ICBC, the Solicitor General's office, and the courts, when you try to nail them down on this, this is where they'll start dancing around. Does a motor vehicle equal an automobile? Are all automobiles motor vehicles? Now, you can say all apples are round red fruit. That does not necessarily mean all round red fruit are apples. If you look at the definition of Motor Vehicle Act, you will find that they do define something which could also be the definition of an automobile. But that doesn't mean they're equal, because the question is it a full and complete definition? If you look at the definition of accident under the Motor Vehicle Act, the definition of accident it says includes an intentional collision. So the question is, if accident is not a full and complete definition, then how can they claim that the definition of motor vehicle in the Motor Vehicle Act is full and complete? It's not. And the other attribute, there is an attribute that separates a motor vehicle from an automobile. And that attribute is, in fact, that the owner has voluntarily registered. They have voluntarily registered their private property, and now it is a motor vehicle. They can use it to deliver pizzas if they want. They can use it to engage in commerce on the highway. They never had an obligation to do so, but now it is a motor vehicle. It is no longer legally considered merely to be a private automobile. So the question is, are we obliged to register? Again, if you look in the Motor Vehicle Act, you know what you find? You find that it states the owner must apply for and receive registration in the form required by ICBC. They tell you flat out you have to apply for it, and we know apply means to beg. And since you are never obliged to beg in a common law jurisdiction, this is entirely voluntary. So that's what I see so far. Bear in mind, this is just a little background information for you there, Mr. Kashid.